Billion-Dollar Whale by Tom Wright and Bradley Hope. Introduction. Imagine for a moment, you're in Las Vegas. Not just anywhere, but at a party so lavish, so over the top, that it makes the wildest scenes from movies look like a quiet night in. It's November 2012. You've been driven to a vacant lot on the Vegas Strip, where a structure the size of an aircraft hangar has been specially built for tonight's event. Inside, it's a surreal wonderland. On one side, a full-scale carnival with a Ferris wheel and a circus trampoline. On the other, the most exclusive nightclub you've ever seen. Caged lions and tigers stand on display. Leonardo DiCaprio is here, laughing with Martin Scorsese. So are Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. Jamie Foxx is on stage, and soon, a giant cake is wheeled out. It bursts open, and out pops Britney Spears, who serenades the birthday boy with Happy Birthday. The gifts are wheeled out: a bright red Lamborghini, 3 high-end motorcycles, and finally, a $2.5 million Bugatti Veyron, wrapped in a ribbon. Who is this birthday boy? He's a pudgy, baby-faced man from Malaysia, just turning 31. He seems shy, awkward even, barely speaking to anyone, yet he's at the center of this universe of wealth and fame. His name is Jho Low. Some whisper he's a prince. Others say he's an arms dealer, or that he inherited billions from his grandfather. The truth, however, is far more astonishing than any rumor. The truth is that the money funding this night, the Bugatti, the celebrities, the millions of dollars being gambled away, was stolen. Not just stolen, but siphoned in one of the most audacious financial heists in human history. Today, we're diving into the extraordinary story told in Billion-Dollar Whale by the brilliant investigative journalists Tom Wright and Bradley Hope. This isn't just a book about finance. It's a real-life thriller that pulls back the curtain on how power, greed, and the illusion of wealth operate at the highest levels of global society. By the end of our journey today, you won't just understand how a young man from a small island fooled Wall Street, Hollywood, and the world. You'll understand something deeper about the very systems that govern our world, and how fragile they can be in the face of breathtaking ambition. Book summary. Our story begins not in the glamour of Las Vegas, but on the small, palm-fringed island of Penang, Malaysia. This is where a young Jho Low, even as a teenager, began to perfect his craft, the art of illusion. He wasn't from a royal family, or even from old money. His father, Larry Low, was a businessman who had made a respectable fortune, worth maybe $15 million. That's a huge amount for most, but in the world Jho Low wanted to enter, it was practically nothing. So, he started creating his own reality. One summer, he borrowed a billionaire family friend's 160-foot yacht and a sprawling holiday home to impress his new, ultra-wealthy friends from Harrow, the elite British boarding school he attended. But he did something else, something small but incredibly telling. He went around the yacht and the house, carefully taking out the owner's family photos and replacing them with pictures of his own family. His friends arrived and were none the wiser. They simply believed this incredible wealth belonged to the Lows. This one small act is the key to understanding Jho Low. He understood, earlier than most, that perception is reality. If you can control what people believe about you, you can control them. This wasn't just about impressing friends. It was a strategy. At Harrow, he surrounded himself with the children of Middle Eastern and Asian royalty, like the son of the Sultan of Brunei. He didn't have their money, but he became their fixer, the one who could get things done. In one instance, he forged a letter on Brunei embassy letterhead to get his underage friends into one of London's hottest nightclubs, China White. It worked. The lesson was clear. The appearance of power was just as good as the real thing. He took this philosophy to the Wharton School of Business in America. While his classmates were studying, Low was networking. He identified the wealthiest students, sons of Kuwaiti magnates and Arab sheiks, and became their friend, throwing lavish parties to cement his status. For his 20th birthday, he spent a rumored $40,000 to rent out a popular Philadelphia nightclub called Shampoo, offering a complimentary open bar all night. He even had a model lie on a bar top, covered in nothing but lettuce leaves and sushi for guests to eat. His classmates started calling him the Asian Great Gatsby, a mysterious figure who hosted incredible parties but always seemed to be observing from a distance. But behind the scenes, it was still an illusion. He couldn't actually afford the party at Shampoo. He paid a portion up front and spent months haggling with the owners to get a steep discount on the rest. He was building a brand of immense wealth, all on borrowed money and sheer nerve. After Wharton, Low knew he wasn't going to climb the corporate ladder. He wanted to play in a bigger league. His plan was simple but audacious. He would become the bridge between the immense, untapped pools of money in the Middle East and the growing economies of Southeast Asia, with himself right in the middle, taking a cut. His first major connection came through a Wharton friend. He secured a meeting with a man named Yusuf al-Otaiba, a young, ambitious, and deeply connected advisor to the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. Otaiba was powerful but not yet fabulously wealthy by royal standards, and he was hungry for opportunities. Low, with his boundless confidence, pitched himself as a Malaysian insider who could bring lucrative deals to the table. It was mostly bluster, but Otaiba was intrigued. This connection was Low's key. Otaiba opened the doors to Abu Dhabi's corridors of power, introducing Low to the heads of massive sovereign wealth funds, government-owned investment pots worth tens of billions of dollars. Low saw firsthand how these young, smooth-talking executives, like Khaldun al-Mubarak of the Mubadala Fund, controlled staggering amounts of capital. A seed was planted. Why couldn't he do that? Back in Malaysia, he needed a powerful patron. He had one in his sights, the family of Najib Razak, Malaysia's deputy prime minister, who was tipped to be the next leader. Low had known Najib's stepson, Riza Aziz, for years from their time in London. His opportunity came when a Malaysian sovereign fund, Khazanah, was looking for partners for a massive real estate project called the Iskandar Development. Low sprang into action. He used his new contacts, calling Otaiba and convincing Abu Dhabi's Mubadala Fund to fly in and invest. Low managed the entire process, positioning himself as the indispensable dealmaker. He presented the deal to Najib Razak as a gift. Here was a massive foreign investment that Najib could take full credit for, boosting his political credentials without having to do any of the work. Najib and his notoriously spendthrift wife, Rosma Mansur, were dazzled. At a party celebrating the deal, Rosma publicly thanked Jho Low for bringing Middle Eastern investment to Malaysia. He was in. But Low was furious. He had expected to make a huge broker fee for himself, but the professional managers at Khazanah refused to pay him. The lesson was clear. Working with clean, well-run institutions was a dead end. To get what he wanted, he needed to control his own fund. He needed to be the one writing the checks. This is where the story turns from ambitious networking to outright fraud. The heist begins. In 2009, Najib Razak becomes the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Almost overnight, Jho Low goes from being a well-connected social climber to having the ear of the most powerful man in the country. And Najib needed money. His ruling party was losing popularity, and he saw a state-owned investment fund as the perfect tool, a secret slush fund to finance political projects and ensure he stayed in power. Low had just the vehicle. He had been working on setting up a smaller fund for the state of Terengganu. Now, he convinced Najib to take it over, expand it, and federalize it. It was renamed One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB for short. On paper, its mission was noble: to invest in green energy and tourism to create jobs for Malaysians. In reality, it was Jho Low's personal piggy bank, and he had the Prime Minister's blessing. Low took no official role at 1MDB. He was a ghost, a phantom pulling the strings from behind the scenes, stuffing the fund's management with his own associates who would follow his orders without question. Now he needed a deal, and he needed a partner who looked legitimate but was, like him, hungry for cash. He found one in a little-known company called Petro Saudi International. It was co-founded by Prince Turki bin Abdullah, a minor Saudi prince who was trading on his royal name to score business deals. To seal the deal, Low orchestrated another masterpiece of illusion. He arranged for Prime Minister Najib and his family to vacation on a superyacht in the French Riviera. At the same time, He had Prince Turki charter and even more impressive yacht, the Alpha Nero, nearby. He then brought Najib aboard to meet the Saudi royalty. The meeting was a complete setup, designed to make Najib believe he was forging a powerful government-to-government alliance. It worked perfectly. Najib was convinced and greenlit a joint venture between 1MDB and Petro Saudi. The plan was simple, on the surface. Petro Saudi would contribute its supposed oil assets, valued at $2.5 billion, to a new joint venture. 1MDB would contribute $1 billion in cash. What happened next was the heist. In a matter of weeks, the deal was rushed through with breathtaking speed. On September 30, 2009, 1MDB instructed its bank, Deutsche Bank, to transfer the $1 billion. But the instructions were strange. Only $300 million was to go to the joint venture's official bank account. The other $700 million, the vast majority, was to be sent to a mysterious, unnamed account at a different Swiss bank, RBS Coutts. The bankers at Deutsche were confused. They asked why. Low's man at 1MDB, Casey Tang, told them it was to repay a loan that Petro Saudi had supposedly made to the joint venture. This was a complete fabrication. The joint venture didn't even have a bank account when the loan was supposedly made. Under pressure, and with the excuse that this is where they want to send it, Deutsche Bank pushed the transfers through. That mysterious account didn't belong to Petro Saudi. It belonged to a shell company set up in the Seychelles called Goodstar Limited. And who owned Goodstar? Jho Low. In one single transaction, he had stolen $700 million of Malaysian government money. It was one of the largest, most brazen thefts in modern history, pulled off in broad daylight, right under the noses of global banks. From that $700 million, Low paid off his co-conspirators at Petro Saudi, sending them tens of millions. But hundreds of millions remained under his sole control. Jho Low, just 27 years old and only a few years out of college, now had access to more liquid cash than almost anyone on earth. And he began to spend it. The years from 2009 to 2012 were a blur of unimaginable excess. The stolen money was funneled from Switzerland into the United States through a loophole, lawyers' trust accounts. These accounts, designed to hold client funds for things like property deals, provided a cloak of anonymity, making it nearly impossible for banks to trace the money's true origin. Between October 2009 and June 2010 alone, Low and his friends spent $85 million on alcohol, private jets, yachts, and paying celebrities and models to hang out with them. He rented a suite of rooms in New York's Park Imperial for $100,000 a month. On one night, he sent 23 bottles of crystal champagne to Lindsay Lohan's table at a club. The New York Post called him the mystery man of the city club scene. He became the ultimate whale, a term casinos use for their biggest spenders. And he wanted to be surrounded by the most famous people in the world. He befriended Paris Hilton, whom he'd fantasized about in college, paying her a reported $100,000 per event just to attend his parties. He threw a party for her 29th birthday, giving her a Cartier watch and $250,000 in gambling chips as a gift. That night, in just 10 minutes, Low lost $2 million at the baccarat table without breaking a sweat. His biggest prize, however, was Leonardo DiCaprio. Low's money offered DiCaprio something priceless: independence. The actor had been trying for years to make a film based on the memoir of Jordan Belfort, the infamous stockbroker. The project was called The Wolf of Wall Street, but the big Hollywood studios were hesitant. The script was too debauched, too risky, and too expensive. Jho Low saw his opening. He teamed up with Najib's stepson, Riza Aziz, and an American talent booker named Joey McFarlane to form a production company called Red Granite Pictures. Their mission: to finance the unfilmable movie. With Low's bottomless pit of stolen 1MDB money, Red Granite swooped in and offered to finance the entire $100 million budget, giving director Martin Scorsese and DiCaprio complete artistic freedom. The irony was staggering. A massive financial fraud was being used to fund a film celebrating a legendary financial fraudster. Even Jordan Belfort himself, upon attending Red Granite's multi-million-dollar launch party at the Cannes Film Festival, smelled a scam. He told his girlfriend, This is a fucking scam? Anybody who does this has stolen money. You wouldn't spend money you worked for like that. But in Hollywood, money talks louder than questions. As Low's profile grew, so did the financial hole at 1MDB. The first heist was just the beginning. The fund needed more money, and Jho Low was about to pull off an even bigger scam, this time with the help of the most powerful investment bank in the world, Goldman Sachs. By 2012, Goldman Sachs was in a difficult position. The 2008 financial crisis had tarnished its reputation. The bank was accused of selling shitty, junk products to its clients while secretly betting against them. Facing new regulations and a weak U.S. economy, Goldman's leaders, like CEO Lloyd Blankfein and President Gary Cohn, decided to push aggressively into emerging markets. They called it monetizing the state, doing big deals with government-run funds. This is where Tim Leissner enters the picture. A dashing, ambitious Goldman banker in Asia, Leissner had been cultivating a relationship with Low for years, hoping to land a major deal with 1MDB. The opportunity came when 1MDB decided to enter the energy business, buying up power plants in Malaysia. To finance this, they needed to borrow billions of dollars by selling bonds to international investors. But 1MDB had no track record and no credit rating. Who would lend them that kind of money? Low, along with a new, powerful and corrupt partner from Abu Dhabi named Khatam al-Khabazi, devised a brilliant plan. Al-Khabazi ran a massive Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth fund called IPIC. The plan was for IPIC to guarantee 1MDB's bonds. This meant if 1MDB failed to pay, Abu Dhabi would step in. With this guarantee, the bonds looked like a safe investment. Goldman Sachs, led by Leissner and a structuring expert named Andrea Vella, agreed to arrange the sale. But this wasn't a normal deal. Goldman didn't just find investors. They bought the entire $3.5 billion worth of bonds themselves in two separate deals, planning to sell them on later. For taking on this supposed risk, they charged 1MDB an astronomical fee. On a typical government bond deal, a bank might make a 1% fee. Goldman made close to 10%, earning nearly $600 million in profit from 1MDB in just 12 months. It was one of the most profitable deals in the bank's recent history. But where did the money go? This was the second and third heist. Just like with Petro Saudi, a huge portion of the money raised was immediately diverted. This time, the money flowed to a fake, look-alike company. It was called Auber Investments PJs Limited, nearly identical to the name of a real IPIC subsidiary. But this was just a shell company in the British Virgin Islands, secretly controlled by Al-Khabazi and Al-Husseini. In total, from these two Goldman-backed bond deals, another $1.4 billion was stolen. This time, the money wasn't just for parties. It was for politics. The 2013 Malaysian elections were approaching, and Prime Minister Najib was in danger of losing. Low took the stolen money and funneled it directly to his patron. In March 2013, he sent a cryptic message to a banker in Malaysia, warning her that 681 American pies were on their way. Days later, $681 million was wired from a shell company into Najib Razak's personal bank account. The money was used to flood the country with cash, funding concerts with K-pop star Psy, giving out free food, and paying off political cronies. Najib clung to power, but just barely. With his political patrons secure, Jho Low's empire reached its peak. He used the new funds to go on an astonishing buying spree. He bought a $39 million mansion in the Hollywood Hills. He attempted to buy the famous Park Lane Hotel in New York for $654 million. He acquired a stake in EMI Music Publishing, making him an instant music mogul. And he began to amass one of the world's most valuable private art collections, buying masterpieces by Monet, Picasso, and Van Gogh. At a Christie's auction in 2013, with Leonardo DiCaprio in the room with him, he paid a record-breaking $48.8 million for a painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat. He hid these priceless works in a secretive, tax-free warehouse in Geneva known as a Freeport, a money launderer's paradise. He also began a romance with supermodel Miranda Kerr, gifting her over $8 million in diamond jewelry. including a necklace with a heart-shaped diamond, telling the jeweler, size matters. And finally, he bought the ultimate status symbol, his own mega yacht, the 300-foot Equanimity, for $250 million. Jho Low had done it. He had used stolen money to build a seemingly legitimate global empire. He was a movie producer, a music mogul, a property tycoon, an art collector, and a philanthropist, all while dating a supermodel. He had created the ultimate illusion. But all illusions, eventually, come to an end. The unraveling was as dramatic as the rise. The first thread was pulled by a man named Xavier Justo, a disgruntled former employee of Petro Saudi. Feeling he'd been cheated out of millions, Justo had made a copy of the company's computer servers before he left. 140 gigabytes of emails and documents that detailed the entire first heist. For years, he sat on this explosive information. Finally, in 2015, he decided to sell it. His buyer was Claire Rucastle Brown, a tenacious British journalist who ran a blog called Sarawak Report. She had been investigating corruption in Malaysia for years and suspected something was deeply wrong at 1MDB. Justo demanded $2 million for the data. Rucastle Brown couldn't pay, but she knew someone who might, Tong Kuiong, the owner of a Malaysian business newspaper, The Edge. Tong bought the data, and in February 2015, the story broke. Sarawak Report and The Edge published a series of bombshell articles, using the leaked emails to prove, for the first time, that hundreds of millions of dollars from 1MDB had been funneled to Jho Low's Goodstar company. The story exploded in Malaysia, but it was a front-page article in the Wall Street Journal in July 2015 that made it a global scandal. The journal reported that investigators had traced nearly $700 million directly into Prime Minister Najib Razak's personal bank accounts. The backlash was swift and brutal. Facing political annihilation, Najib transformed from a charming, Western-friendly leader into a ruthless strongman. In a single week, he fired the Attorney General who was preparing to file criminal charges against him. He fired his own Deputy Prime Minister for speaking out. He suspended the newspapers that broke the story. The crackdown had a chilling effect. A public prosecutor on the case, Kevin Morris, was abducted from his car, murdered, and his body was found encased in concrete inside an oil drum. Najib had shut down the investigation in Malaysia, but he couldn't stop the world. The U.S. Department of Justice had launched its own probe, led by a special FBI squad dedicated to international corruption. In July 2016, Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced the largest asset seizure in U.S. history, moving to reclaim over $1 billion in assets, including the Park Laurel penthouse, the rights to The Wolf of Wall Street, the Emmy music stake, the private jet, and the priceless art collection, all bought with stolen 1MDB money. The lawsuit thinly disguised Prime Minister Najib as Malaysian official one. The net was closing. Jho Low became a fugitive, hiding out in Thailand and China, living on his super yacht. His partners began to fall. Khatam al-Khabazi was arrested in Abu Dhabi. Bankers in Singapore who had helped Low move the money were sent to jail. Tim Leisner was fired from Goldman Sachs. For a time, it seemed Najib might survive. He had the full power of the state behind him. But he had underestimated one thing: the anger of the Malaysian people. In May 2018, in a stunning election upset, Najib's ruling party was thrown out of power for the first time in the nation's history. His 92-year-old predecessor, Mahathir Mohamad, returned to lead the country, campaigning on a single promise: to bring those responsible for the 1MDB scandal to justice. Days later, Najib and his wife Rosma were stopped at an airport trying to flee the country on a private jet. Police raided their properties and what they found was astonishing. They carted away 567 luxury handbags, including countless Hermes Birkins, 12,000 pieces of jewelry, 423 watches, and $28 million in cash, all stuffed into bags and safes. It took days just to count it all. Soon after, Najib Razak, the once untouchable prime minister, was arrested and charged with massive corruption. And Jho Low? He vanished. With arrest warrants out for him in Malaysia, Singapore, and an Interpol red notice, he disappeared, believed to be hiding somewhere in China, protected by powerful figures who saw him as a useful pawn. His last great asset, the equanimity, was seized by the FBI in Bali. The boy from Penang who had built an empire on illusion was finally left with nothing but a life on the run. Commentary. When you finish a story like Billion Dollar Whale, it's easy to feel a sense of shock, maybe even a little bit of anger. How could something like this happen? How could one person steal so much money and get away with it for so long? But I think the most powerful lesson in this book isn't just about the greed of one man. It's about the systems that allowed him to thrive. Jho Low was not a financial genius. He didn't invent some complex new algorithm. His true genius was in understanding human nature and the weaknesses of the global financial system. He understood that in a world obsessed with wealth and status, the appearance of success is often more powerful than success itself. From swapping those family photos on the yacht as a teenager to convincing prime ministers and Wall Street bankers that he represented billions in family wealth, his entire career was built on a carefully crafted illusion. He knew that if you throw enough money around, if you have celebrities at your parties and fly on private jets, people stop asking questions. They want to believe you're the real deal, because it benefits them to be in your orbit. This story is a profound indictment of the gatekeepers of our financial world. Every step of the way, there was a bank, an auditor, a law firm, or a regulator that should have stopped this. Goldman Sachs, in its pursuit of enormous profits, overlooked countless red flags. Private banks in Switzerland and Singapore, hungry for the business of a new billionaire, bent their own rules. Lawyers created shell companies that provided the perfect cover for money laundering. The system that is supposed to protect us failed, again and again, because the people inside it were blinded by the fees and the allure of immense wealth. And what about Hollywood? The book shines a harsh light on the transactional nature of celebrity. For the right price, stars will show up to your party, sing for you, and even become your friend. Low's money bought him access to the most exclusive circles on the planet, not because they liked him, but because he could fund their projects, their charities, and their lifestyles. It reveals a world where proximity to money often matters more than the money's origin. So, what can we take away from this? For a young person starting out, this story is a powerful cautionary tale, but it's also an education. It teaches you to be skeptical, to look past the surface of things. When you see extreme wealth that seems to have come from nowhere, ask questions. When a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. This book shows us that true value isn't built on illusion. It's built on integrity, hard work, and creating something real. Jho Low built an empire of air, and in the end, that's all that was left. He has the money, for now, but he has no country, no freedom, and no peace. He is a prisoner of the very wealth he stole. We've journeyed through the incredible highs and the staggering lows of this story today. But what I've shared is just the blueprint of this massive financial maze. The real story, the true thriller, is in the details that Tom Wright and Bradley Hope so brilliantly uncovered. A summary is like looking at a map, but reading the book is like taking the journey yourself. If this story has sparked your curiosity, if you want to truly understand how one man fooled the world, I urge you to pick up a copy of Billion Dollar Whale. The link is in the description. It's more than a book, it's an education in how the modern world really works. Also, if you found value in our deep dive today, it would mean the world to me if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. We have so many more incredible stories and timeless lessons to explore together. Let's continue this journey of learning and growing, one book at a time.